Darkcast Network. Indie pods with a dark side.
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
We say fuck a lot. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Hey, Dylan.
Hey, Heather.
What's up, bud?
Oh, just hanging out. How are you, my love?
Oh, you know, feeling good, like Nina Simone.
That's right.
The birds are chirping outside, and my dog is asleep next to me, and I'm ready to podcast.
He's such a good little studio dog.
But we are never on time. Who sang the song in the early 2000s?
Always on time.
Well, they were not singing about us, bud. We are never on time.
We've been even worse lately, and we really do apologize, but we're going to get straightened out.
We're like Dory in Finding Nemo. We're a delay fish. Yeah, well, okay. I'll beg your apologies, folks. We are late. But in my defense, I wrote this episode. It didn't save for some reason.
Yeah.
Though I thought I saved it. Can't find it anywhere on the computer. Had to go back, type the whole thing again. So it's taken me like 2 weeks to finally finish this.
You figure after 5 years plus of podcasting, we'd be more tech savvy, but we're not.
We are not professionals.
We're podcasters.
Okay. We are amateurs. We are do-it-yourself indie podcasters. If you want something fancy, you can go listen to one of the big shows.
Yeah, this is not fancy, y'all.
Okay, this is like a second-rate project we got going on here.
But I gotta say, some people would get frustrated and say, "Screw it, I'm just not going to do it anymore." But this girl right here, she will not do that.
I mean, I did it, but I wasn't happy about it. I was cussing the whole time, you son of a bitch.
And she has a very special, mysterious story for us today.
It is a mystery, Dylan, and it's a bit of a departure maybe from our typical true crime case, but I thought it was worth sharing.
Yeah.
Because it's so strange.
Well, let's get right into it.
All right. Yes, let's not delay. 1935, Dylan.
I remember that.
No, you don't. It was quite a year. On the other side of the world, Adolf Hitler built up his navy and made other ominous strides toward bringing his dark vision to fruition. Louisiana Governor Huey P. Long was assassinated. Congress passed the Social Security Act, and Admiral Byrd returned from his 2-year expedition to Antarctica.
Oh, wow.
The game of Monopoly was introduced, and Mutiny on the Bounty won the Best Picture Oscar. Also, we, meaning the collective Americans, right?
Right.
Although Americans are not the only ones who listen to our show.
No.
Dude, I've got to tell you, Dylan, this week we have folks, we're charting in Taiwan, Hungary, and Ghana.
Wow. Thank you for the listeners there.
So we got international listeners.
They listen to my dumbass all over the world.
They are listening to your dumbass everywhere. But you know what, Dylan? We Americans were balls deep in the Great Depression.
Oh, wow. That was
at this time.
Huge point in American history right there.
More importantly, at this time, technological leaps coupled with people's desire for news happened to intersect. They were colliding, Dylan.
It was a perfect storm.
Radio entered its golden age with Jack Benny and Walter Winchell, but print media leaped forward with better quality reproduction and faster print speed. The Associated Press had been sending news across the wire, which was Morse code over old-fashioned telegraph keys, and they started using teletype machines, which was a new technology that clunked along at 60 words per minute. The wire photo machine also helped get black and white photos in editors' hands in just minutes over phone lines instead of waiting days to receive them via postal service.
Wow, these are some huge leaps in technology.
So as 1935 dawned, depression-weary Americans hungered for distraction, and momentary escape could be found in salacious news stories of ritzy affluence, crime among the elites, celebrity sin, and dramatic deaths. They wanted these stories in real time.
So it's kind of funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's interesting that even then there was this need from the public to get this type of information.
Like tabloid news.
Yeah.
They wanted pulp novels, tabloid news. True crime is not a new interest. At this time, you had those like detective magazines, True Crime or True Detective magazine.
Yeah.
That would show gruesome photos.
Yeah, sometimes they would be real crime scene photos.
Oh, yeah. And deliver wild, maybe not always factually correct accounts of murder and mayhem.
So there's this hunger for these salacious stories and details, and they want it now.
Yes, Dylan. Readers were ready for a juicy scandal. One with love, sex, betrayal, money, death, and mystery.
And this is the same elements that drive the public interest to this day.
I was going to say, in 2024, I want a juicy scandal with all these elements. Well, the death of a wealthy hotel heiress in a sleepy resort town would capture headlines and interest.
Oh, wow.
Now, Dylan, let's discuss the scene of our story. Pinehurst, North Carolina. Are you familiar with Pinehurst?
I've heard of it, but I've never been there, and I don't know much about
near
it.
Southern Pines. It's in eastern North Carolina. It's a village in Moore County, and it is home to the historic Pinehurst Resort, a golf club which has hosted multiple U.S. Open championships. In 1895, James Walker Tufts purchased 500 acres and eventually about 5,500 more with the vision of building a health resort for people of modest means. Tufts hired the famous Frederick Law Olmsted to design the village. Now, Olmsted is, I'm going to say, a quite famous person.
Right.
He is like the father of modern forestry.
Yeah, he's known as the father of forestry in America. He brought it with him from
Landscape
Germany.
architect. I believe he designed the grounds at the Biltmore Estate in Asheville, which was close to our home.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, people would come from all over the world to study with him as he was basically managing and sculpting entire forests.
So he's brought in to help build up this village.
Well, and
Fancy.
That's the best talent out there for this purpose.
In 1935, Pinehurst didn't have a lot of working class folk. There were a few servants, bellhops, and cooks who were there looking after playboys and their women.
So it's an upper class resort, and the only regular folk, if you will, around are there to assist the attendees of said resort.
Rich people went there to golf, retire, or to restore their health. So, they needed a few peasants around for these little menial tasks. Go valet, go fetch me my silk cravat.
Oh, okay.
I'm having drinks at 5.
I'd be like a little peasant boy who's lost me clothes.
You always want to be a peasant boy who lost his clothes.
Please, Mom, help me.
Is this like a deep-seated fantasy of yours?
I don't know.
You always want to be the peasant boy who lost his clothes.
But I know if I came to you and I had lost all me clothes as I walked down the dirt path, you would help me.
No, I would not.
You wouldn't?
Okay, let's role play.
Okay. Oh, from the beginning?
Yes.
Oh no, I've lost all me clothes. I was just walking down this path.
But what the fuck do you want me to do about it?
Please, Mom, can you help me?
Get on somewhere.
As I move closer to your body.
Get.
Oh, wait, you got a pitchfork.
I got my broom. Get.
Oh, gosh, you run me off.
I'm not in the habit of entertaining naked strangers.
Okay.
On my path.
I was trying to press close to your body.
Get.
She done sick the dogs on me.
See, this is why we can't role play, Dylan.
Damn.
Fantasies shut down.
Okay.
Pinehurst has been designated as the home of American golf by the U.S. Golf Association. It is also known for its strong equestrian community, which hosted the former Stony Brook steeplechase. Fox hunting is also a common sport in the area.
Oh, yeah. I've done a lot of fox hunting back in the day.
Now, these are definitely like upper crust activities. Horseback riding, equestrian stuff.
It's like the fox hunting. You have all these the well-to-dos on horseback in a big clump, and they have like 50 hounds.
Well, I was going to say I've always dreamt of being able to say, release the hounds.
Yeah.
Right?
And they'll basically
like
go
Mr. Burns.
run the fox
in
out
The Simpsons.
directly in front of this group. They don't. Let's just say it's not very sporting, and they don't have to work real hard to catch the fox. All the people who are handling it and setting up the hunt, that's the people doing the real work. The peasants.
Yes.
It's really kind of ridiculous, honestly.
So again, Dylan, this is what you would call rich people activities.
Certainly.
Rich people shit.
And this is even beyond just rich. These are like old money, very what I would consider wealthy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big
Like,
money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I know fox hunting is a big part of the UK history, and I wasn't making fun of that in any way. But it just seems like a lot.
Well, yeah, but I think most poor folk like us are now like fox hunting. We're not having a fox hunting party.
Please come to my fox hunt.
Please assemble the friends and release the hounds.
You just
No,
want to let the hounds go.
I do. I want to release the hounds so bad. But we just have Rufus, and he's only 9 pounds.
He
so
always runs back up to the bed.
I feel like a fox could eat him.
No.
All right, so nobody knows to whom the blonde baby girl who would later become Elva Idesta Statler was born, but the date is known, June 7th, 1912, just 2 months after the Titanic disaster, Dylan. It was thought that Elva was born in New York City. The baby unknowingly had a stroke of good fortune as she was adopted by Ellsworth W. Statler, who has been described as an extraordinary gentleman.
With a name like that, how could he not be?
I mean, Ellsworth's kind of a great name.
the
right?
whole name, Ellsworth W. Statler. Wow.
Ellsworth Statler's life was the original Horatio Alger story, a rags to riches tale of a poor son of a rural Pennsylvania country minister who would rise to become one of the captains of American business. You always love those rags to riches stories, Dylan.
Well, these are truly self-made people. You know, they come from nothing, and they end up being titans of industry sometimes.
Kind of like those people who opened Crumble Cookie. Started as like a side hustle, and now they're like clearing $1 billion a year. I'm obsessed with Crumble. They need to like sponsor the podcast and give me all the free cookies.
Look, if you haven't done it, may sound silly. It's just cookies.
They're the best cookies.
If you haven't done it and you like cookies,
I think about them all the time.
we're probably gonna go get some after this.
I was actually going to say, can we make that our afternoon adventure?
Right now, as we're on our ventures and we light here and there, Heather always, since she's found out about it and had one, she sees if we can go to the gym, and she sees where the crumble cookie is.
It's very counterproductive.
Yeah.
I go burn my calories and then I go eat like 4 cookies.
But she has to have one near her, but folks. Go try it.
It's true. Okay, so by 13, Ellsworth was working as a bellhop at the McClure Hotel in Wheeling, West Virginia. By 15, he was promoted to head bellboy. Then he moved on to night desk clerk, then head clerk. Before the age of 20, Statler had already learned the ins and outs of running a hotel and was put in charge of running the entire McClure Hotel
Wow.
by the time he was 20. So pretty successful guy.
Very.
In 1895, Ellsworth married Mary Manderbach of Akron, Ohio, and had a successful venture in the food service industry. He took a bold chance by opening a massive hotel in Buffalo, New York. And this was a temporary hotel, Dylan, for the upcoming Pan American Exposition that was held there in 1901.
Oh, okay. So it's just kind of like a, I'm sure it's constructed differently than a permanent structure. It's probably a little more flimsy. And so they were getting prepared for this big event, huh?
Neither the exposition neither the exposition or the hotel fared well, but Ellsworth expanded to St. Louis, where he opened the Inside Inn for the 1904 Louisiana Purchase Expo.
The Inside Inn.
Yes.
Okay.
In 1907, he opened another hotel in Buffalo, New York called the Statler, with a focus on efficiency, guest-friendly staff, and offering, quote, a room and a bath for $1.50. I like his little tagline there. It rhymes.
It does rhyme.
It's concise.
And I'm going to assume it was a pretty damn good deal.
I can think of jingles. A room and a bath for $1.50.
Well, it's just like Costco early on offered a hot dog and a drink for $1.50, and to this day they still just charge $1.50
For the hot dog and the drink?
Yeah,
Dude.
and they're known for it.
My dad has a Costco membership.
We
Can
need to
we
go. But I'm
I
telling
have to say, dude, I love to eat at Costco's little food court.
and the hot dog was
It's
born.
good.
One of the employees had a little card out front, asked the manager if he could sell hot dogs as a little side hustle. And he was so successful that one manager is like, hold on a second. Everybody wants a hot dog and a drink for $1.50. So they made it part of the store. And to this day is a cornerstone of Costco.
Costco is not sponsoring this podcast either,
They're not.
but we're open for negotiations. Now, he was the first to put phones, full-length mirrors, and closets in every guest room.
Wow.
Over the years, he would open Statler hotels in Cleveland, Boston, that was his flagship with 1,300 rooms, Detroit, and New York City. He kept up with technology, placing radios in all rooms by 1927. Ellsworth ran a tight ship, demanding the best from his employees, but he also rewarded them with programs ahead of their time, like 5-day work weeks, retirement benefits, and other opportunities and programs.
So as a guest, if you were to come stay in one of these rooms, it would blow you away, the fact that it had full-length mirrors, phones, and you would tell all your friends, look,
Yes.
I stayed at this place, and it was so nice. It was so convenient.
Yeah, it was very modern.
Yeah.
And like nothing that had been seen in the hotel world.
Yeah, I guess they were just kind of like boarding houses still. You know what I mean?
Now, eventually, Statler hotels will sell to Conrad Hilton in the early 1950s for like $111 million or something.
Yes, because Hilton realized the easiest way to grow fast, which is what he needed at the time, was to buy out other existing hotel chains.
Right. So you can see Statler, I mean, he's a name in the hospitality industry. Now, as successful as Ellsworth was as a hotelier, there was one thing he failed to do, and that was produce a child with his wife, Mary. Statler was said to have a special way with children, and his wife was active in many programs to aid underprivileged youth. It was an ironic twist of fate for a man who loved children so much that he would never be able to have any of his own, which is very sad.
It's very sad.
But in the end, that did not faze him. Statler and his wife would adopt 4 children. In 1906, Milton was adopted, followed by Marion in 1907, and then Elva and Ellsworth Jr., who were adopted in 1912. Now, it's been theorized that they were twins because they shared the same birth date.
Well, that makes sense.
But, of course, Ellsworth and his wife never really, I guess, gave up that information. It wasn't public knowledge.
They never presented them as twins.
Right. And they were probably fraternal twins. They weren't identical.
So is it the paternal identical, but did you say fraternal?
Fraternal. twins?
Fraternal.
Yeah.
Okay. So you like from the same frat.
I think I'm saying that
womb.
correctly.
Or is it paternal twins? Either way, I always think it's the fact that identical twins share even the same DNA is pretty wild to me. And
It's not paternal, it's fraternal
okay.
twins, Dylan.
So yeah, you got a haze.
And that
of-
means that 2 separate eggs are fertilized by 2 separate sperm.
right.
They're not going to be alike.
No.
Like they're like siblings born at different times.
Yep.
They just happen to be in the same womb at the same time.
Yeah. They hitched a
So
ride.
not paternal,
Right.
fraternal, which is what I said.
And
Okay.
obviously the identical is the egg splits in half.
Well, I'm glad we have this lesson in biology. Now let's move along. So nothing has ever been revealed about their birth parents, but it's been long suggested that the children perhaps belong to Ellsworth's brother, Osceola. Is that a name?
Wow.
Who struggled with problems such as alcoholism and habitual unemployment. Although Statler was known as a kind, generous, and devoted father, he was also stern with high expectations, but by all accounts, like a good dad. But he really wanted his children to be successful and to pave their own way.
I've known other people that suffer from the blight of perpetual unemployment. Or
They've suffered from the perpetual piece of shit syndrome.
That's what it is. They're losers, folks.
I think everyone has probably known at least known of a person like that in their lifetime.
Yeah, they've had like 30 jobs and they didn't keep one of them more than 6 months. Yeah, you know that kind of person.
Yeah, new job every time you talk to them.
Yeah, new job, who it is.
Dude, I have a cousin and she's like my dad's age, so she's up there.
Right.
She's up there in the years. And my entire life, that woman, every time I talk to her, is working at a different place.
Or just started.
And she's basically burned her bridges at like every place that she has to drive counties away to work now.
Yeah.
And you're just like, why can't you fucking keep a job, dude?
She's
a hairstylist, which I'm like, you have a lot of flexibility in that.
Mm-hmm.
Bitch can't keep a job.
You just get some clients. So she's worked at every salon in three counties, basically.
Yeah.
That sounds like a her problem.
It is. No, it is. But I'm always just like, damn, girl.
I don't like changing jobs.
Get a job.
I've realized that.
Keep a job.
It's one of the reasons most of the jobs I've worked in my life, I've worked them for, years.
I've changed jobs, but I typically work at a place for a year, 2, 3, 4, 6 before I change. And a lot of mine's been upward mobility. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you take a new job because it's paying more and you're getting more responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not like lateral moves.
And that's fine.
So it's like
that's a good
always
thing.
Taking a job that's offering me more pay or like better skills or growth in my area.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, that's a good reason to change jobs. Not just because you can't get along with people or you can't just do your job.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I went from, Taco Bell to McDonald's. I'm not making like a lateral moves here, bud.
I want some Taco Bell.
It's like going from being the assistant to the director kind of thing.
Okay. My girl got upward mobility.
But you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of those people are like making lateral or downward moves.
And they always want to tell you about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Moving along. In 1924, Ellsworth sold the family's comfortable Buffalo home and moved everyone to New York City, including 12-year-old Elva. They took up the entire top floor of his Hotel Pennsylvania.
See, that'd be the cool thing about owning a hotel.
Living in a penthouse.
Yup.
You would live in a penthouse?
Well, yeah.
I would love to live in a hotel. Now, hotels gross me out, but if it's my hotel and I own it, then I know it's clean. That would be great. You should get room service. You have housekeeping come in.
Well, you just start living in the penthouse off day one, and that way no one else has been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the life, bud. They took up the entire top floor, as I mentioned. Now, Mary had suggested moving the family to New York City since Ellsworth was often away in the city on business. And this is a way that the family could be near him. Because, again, family's very important to Ellsworth. He doesn't like to be away from his wife and children. She doesn't like it when her husband's away. The kids miss him. So we'll just move closer. Then you're never far away from us.
And that makes sense. If you have the means to do that, that would be the best way to do it.
October 25th of 1925, Mary Statler passed away of pneumonia. After this, Elva's life seemed to be filled with emotional blows, major disappointment, or personal upheaval. At 13, she was sent to a boarding school in New Jersey. She was involved in sports and clubs, but mostly kept a C average. Though she was wildly popular and involved in all of these activities, she wasn't a very good student academically.
Well, maybe she was just so busy she couldn't concentrate on schoolwork.
Or maybe she just didn't give a shit.
Yeah. And I don't blame her.
I can relate.
Hey, you know what C is? It's passing.
You know what? C's get degrees done.
We've had C average presidents, It works.
While at school, Elva's father remarried his secretary of 11 years, who happened to be 30 years younger. Scandalous.
They just fell in love across the desk from each other.
Well, this, of course, led to a lot of speculation about office hanky-panky.
How could it not?
I love the term hanky-panky, and any opportunity I have to insert that in conversation, I'm gonna.
It's a very fun turn of phrase.
Hanky-panky.
Yeah.
It suggests so many so many things. There could be a variety of hanky-panky happening.
It is, but you have no doubt in your mind what hanky-panky is. You know, just the way the words come off of your lips.
Yeah, there could be some butt grabbing.
Ooh.
Some ditty butt grabbing.
Oh, God,
That
not the
kinda hanky.
diddler.
Anyway, the wedding plans were carried out with great secrecy, and everyone was shocked to learn the news because they just sort of got married and bam, here's my new wife who happened to be my secretary. Everybody's like, what?
I bet the tongues were a wagging.
Only a few months later, Marion Statler, at 20 years old, returned from a cruise with pneumonia. Just like her adopted mother, she passed away at the family's Long Island summer home. Elva had stayed by her sister's side until the very end. The family suffered a wrenching year. As 1928 dawned, Ellsworth desperately needed to get the family away from the stress and thought a change of scenery would be a welcome relief. He also thought a trip might cultivate a relationship between his youngest daughter, Elva, and her new stepmother. He decided to take advice from friends. They would visit a resort town, which was growing in popularity among their wealthy friends. And it was a town none of them had ever visited before, Pinehurst, North Carolina. Ellsworth was pleased with the ability to play golf in the winter months due to the mild temperatures. He and Mrs. Statler also took up riding while they were there.
So this place has all the fun activities, has a great
Climate.
And so it's a chance for him to spend time with the family and kind of decompress from all the things they've been through.
Yes.
Okay.
And he's hoping this is going to help these two ladies in his life maybe forge a friendship. Right?
Yes.
Well, Elva immediately fell in love with Pinehurst. The place was brimming with outdoor sports that she loved so much: golf, tennis, and horseback riding. She found plenty of young people her age to hang out with and made fast friends. It seemed that Elva was quick to make friends. Like, she had a charming personality. Wherever she went, people just immedately befriended her. She was just one of those. She was 100% that bitch, Dylan.
I'm like that.
You are.
But it's genuine, but at the same time, if they want to take that friendship further, that's where I get nervous. Because I really don't want
You like casual friendship, is what you're saying.
Small talk, work acquaintances. I'm really good at making acquaintances.
You are.
Yeah.
You're popular.
I don't know about that.
You always sit at the cool kids table, and then you invite me along.
That's not true.
So that I can sit there and scowl.
You're the nucleus.
That's not true.
That's true.
After the first visit, Elva begged her father to return someday soon, and he agreed. So she's just really into this place.
Well, it sounds fun, honestly. And if you're into golf, nature, horseback ride, equestrian sports, I mean, here's
rich people activities,
fox hunting and stuff. Manipulating world markets. This is the place to do it at.
But fate is cruel. A few months after their return from Pinehurst, Ellsworth fell ill, also with pneumonia.
Yeah, I think people forget nowadays pneumonia was a killer. I mean, there wasn't a good, I guess, antibiotics.
Well, let's be honest, it's still
dangerous.
Kills people today.
It's very dangerous, and we're just now, in the modern medical world, getting a bit of a handle on, saving people, getting them to recover. But it's really hard on your body.
It is, and especially children, elderly folks.
Yeah.
Anyone who's got medical issues to begin with.
Pre-existing issues with your lungs. Yeah.
He rallied, but then took a turn for the worst. At 15, Elva was once again orphaned. The two younger children, Elva and Ellsworth Jr., spent a brief period at the hotel with a virtual stranger, their stepmother.
So you're an adopted orphan, and then you end up an orphan again. That's pretty tragic.
Alice Statler made it very clear that she didn't want the stepchildren around.
Hey Murderitas, I'm Danica.
And I'm Shannon.
We are the mother-daughter hosts of Murder and Mimosas,
a true crime podcast that strives to focus on lesser-known cases.
We personally think these episodes go down a little bit better with a mimosa.
You sip, we share.
So grab yours and get ready, because every Saturday at brunch time is a new episode.
You can listen to us on any podcast platform.
She's sort of the evil stepmother.
Send them to boarding school.
She went from secretary to filthy rich heiress just with the snap of a finger. And she was not having these kids around. She was not trying to be mama. Sending Ellsworth Jr., who suffered what was listed as cognitive disabilities, she sent him to England.
Okay.
To be cared for. And Elva back to the boarding school in New Jersey. Not long after her husband's death, Alice filed a petition claiming all the money and holdings of Statler's company belonged to her.
Yeah, it seems like she certainly had an agenda, and the kids were not in that agenda. Like, you got to send them to the UK to get care.
She didn't win, but managed to change the will. The children would have to give up their seats on the board of their father's company in order to get their 10,000 shares of Statler stock.
And that's a huge concession because they're losing control at that point.
Elva graduated in 1930 and attended Radcliffe College in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She majored in fine arts and played piano, which she learned to play with great skill. Elva became an accomplished pianist, and she actually dreamed of being a concert pianist.
I'm always in awe of people who can play the piano
Yes.
at this level.
Anybody with musical
It's
talents.
beautiful. Yeah, that's true. But the piano,
Voice
violin,
or cello.
Yes.
I've always dreamed of playing the cello.
it's so eerie and beautiful, these types of music.
It is.
It's amazing.
Every year during winter breaks, Elva visited Pinehurst. She began engaging the services of Emmanuel Birch, known as Manny, as her butler while she was there. She often took friends along to North Carolina, including her closest college friend, Isabel Bear. While in college, Elva excelled in many activities, though her grades were not impressive. She was a wonderful swimmer with a bright future. There were talks that Elva might have been able to participate in the U.S. Olympics in the swim team.
Wow.
In the 1936 Olympics, had she not injured her spine during her junior year at Radcliffe. While she was in college before this injury, they were talking about how she could possibly be an Olympic champion.
So she wasn't just good, she was great at swimming.
Yeah. It was also during her junior year that Elva suffered another tragic setback. Her older brother, Milton, was killed in a car crash near Tucson, Arizona. He was only 27. Elva was consumed with intense grief. She was left with only one living relative, the institutionalized Ellsworth Jr., who was on a separate continent.
I mean, again, you have all this money. You could have private care come in.
I think it just goes to show money can't buy happiness.
Well,
it doesn't fix your problems.
No. And it's obviously obvious for the wicked stepmother that she didn't have any care for these children. They were just there, and they were to be dealt with and put away somewhere out of her way.
How could you be so callous?
So you go from a secretary to filthy rich because you struck up this relationship with Mr. Statler.
Hanky panky.
Yeah.
He chased you around the desk and did a little spanky.
But then, I mean, instead of being humble or grateful, you're this evil bitch.
You're just an old bitch, an old biddy. Elva surprised friends when she suddenly dropped out of college in 1934. She was suffering health problems from a diving accident, and she had also been involved in a car wreck, and she was kind of concerned about that. She thought she could possibly be facing a lawsuit because of this car crash, and I don't have a lot of details about it. There was another reason for her choice to drop out of college, Dylan. While visiting Pinehurst, Elva had met someone.
Oh.
She was in love. For once in her life, Elva thought something was finally going her way.
Yeah, love.
Yes, well, it makes the world go round, Dylan.
It does it causes a lot of problems, and it solves a lot of problems. Love is a very funny thing.
It is.
Yeah.
I love when you wax poetic.
It can
You're
kill
all
you.
Philosopher over here.
But it can also bring you back to life.
Though Elva Statler clearly fell in love with Henry Bradley Davidson when friends introduced them in Pinehurst in 1934, many wondered why. Born to wealth, but then lost it, Davidson, who goes by Brad, we'll call him Brad, was a man who set out to maintain his status in life by whatever means necessary. He was considered charming enough, but also lazy.
Okay.
His father had been in the real estate business in Washington, D.C., and he comes from a prominent D.C. family. His ancestor, Samuel Davidson, had come to America from Scotland long before the American Revolution and had massive land holdings, eventually selling off a tract of land that became sites of the White House, the Treasury Department, and Lafayette Park.
Good Lord, so he owned a big chunk of D.C.
At one point, the family owned nearly all the land in southern Montgomery County, Maryland. To this day, Chevy Chase, Maryland includes a Bradley Boulevard and a Davidson Drive, named after this family. Though born with a silver spoon in his mouth, Brad's family fell on hard times. In 1912, his father, along with some other investors, schemed to build a posh development on the shores of the Potomac River, which would rival Chevy Chase. Now, if you're not familiar with the D.C. area, Chevy Chase, Maryland is quite a moneyed place. Big money, big houses. It's where the well-to-do live and send their kids to private schools.
So, interesting. Chevy Chase.
Chevy Chase, Maryland.
Okay, I'm assuming it's not named after the actor.
I'm thinking maybe he's
I'm
named
thinking
after...
he's named after... I'm saying he's named after Chevy Chase.
Yeah, I know, but it is a very affluent
right
area.
So it's like a Greenwich Village. It's just everybody's going to be... or not Greenwich, I'm sorry.
Greenwich, Connecticut.
Greenwich, Connecticut is what I meant.
Yeah, it's a very moneyed area.
Okay.
I mean, these are beautiful houses, wealthy, a lot of, fancy people live there. They called their new venture, or adventure, whatever you want to say, Bradley Hills. Now, in the end, the developers got no further than building a road, a trolley line, and a small amusement park. Besides shaky finances...
I like how they built the amusement park first.
Well, besides shaky finances, a recession hit in 1913, which lasted about a year, but it compounded with the outbreak of World War I and then the flu epidemic. Things were not going well.
That's just a recipe for disaster. And when you're trying to build a posh resort, it's the worst kind of project to be happening during these types of events.
Yeah, economic downturn didn't go well. Investors pulled their money out. And though Brad attended the National Cathedral School in Washington, D.C. and Cornell University, he didn't graduate from either school. He left in the middle of his last year at Cathedral without finishing. For the next 3 years, he helped his dad and uncle with their real estate business. He then married Jessica Aylward of Berryville, Virginia, at the Collegiate Church of New York City in September of 1915. He spent the next 2 years living at his wife's sprawling estate in Virginia, near the Shenandoah Valley, during which time they became parents to a daughter also named Jessica, and they would have 2 sons as well. So he marries a woman who's from some affluence as well, has a sprawling estate where they can go fox hunting.
I've never lived on anything that would be considered sprawling.
No.
I was in an extra wide, single wide one time. That was pretty nice.
That's nice.
It was like 80 foot long, too.
The other day we saw a trailer mansion.
Yeah.
I wanted to take photo. We need to go back and get some
We're
pictures.
going to go back.
It was like several single wides that were sort of stacked on top of each other, and they had built like this massive trailer mansion.
Yeah, it had this huge deck across the entire
impressive.
front, and they tied all the trailers together with like this big false roof. It was amazing, and we're going to go back and get pictures and put on the Instagram.
It was a structural spectacle.
Well, maybe we shouldn't take pictures of people's houses.
Well, I'm just impressed with it.
It comes from love in my heart.
It's almost like having a boat truck. Like, I kind of want it.
It's just like a boat truck.
Okay. Brad entered the U.S. Army in 1917, where he was commissioned as a pilot and sent to Europe. He achieved the rank of captain, serving mostly in France. He rejoined his family's real estate business, but the last bit of family fortune went down the drain with the stock market crash of 1929. However, he had been gone by that time for over a year from his family's business for some unknown reason. In 1928, Bradley abandoned his family, his wife and children, and headed out west.
Okay, so you've squandered all the family fortune away with a bunch of bad deals, basically, and then other things beyond your control finished wiping you out. So this is the time you should just abandon your family and go out west.
He then spent 3 years in Illinois and some time in Milwaukee before returning to Baltimore. And in Illinois and Milwaukee, he was reportedly working in some form of manufacturing. So he returns to Baltimore. In 1931, Brad's father passed away. And that's when his wife, Jessica, filed for separation. And Brad got himself involved in a failed real estate development once again on the Potomac.
No way.
This time, he wasn't an investor because there was no family money left to invest. He was working as a salesman for a wealthy woman who wanted to turn her family farm into a development that she would call Annapolis Roads. Soon, Brad was listed as manager of the Annapolis Road Club. Things were going well at first, but then financial pressures mounted as the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. He worked briefly for Sherwood Oil in Baltimore, but again, that did not last very long. Brad had this growing list of failures. Like, it seemed like everything he tried to do didn't last very long, and he was not successful.
We have a phrase in the South that covers that. Everything he touches turns to shit.
Yes. But again, Brad's lazy.
Well, yeah.
It seems like Brad doesn't really want to work.
Well, no, there's that, and I think sometimes you'll have these in these families. You'll have they have wealth, inherited down the line, but they just don't have any business sense. You know what I mean? They think just because they came from some money and they have some fortune at hand that all these projects are going to work out. And there's a lot of logistics and thought put into these huge projects like this. When you talk about developing an entire waterfront or farmland into some kind of spectacle of a resort, that's a big deal, and it does not happen overnight. And you can make 2 or 3 poor decisions that can literally bring the whole project down. So obviously Brad is not good at this type of thing.
At the end of 1933, Brad was still a hanger-on in the elite upper-class social circles around Greater Washington, D.C., despite the fact that he had little money to support himself in that lifestyle he had once known. Things didn't break Brad's way. Not only could he not maintain regular employment, but his wife Jessica sued him for divorce. The judge ordered the penniless Brad to make alimony and child support payments to his former wife. And guess what, Dylan? He couldn't manage to do that.
Yeah, see, he had been better off if he had never tried any projects and just sat on that money.
If he would have just sat still at his wife's estate and just been a husband and father, he probably could
was still have an estate.
Been taken care of, right?
Yeah.
Well, the middle-aged man had no wife, no job, no money, and no prospects. His brother had taken a seasonal lease on a house in Knollwood, which was near Pinehurst. Brad took a train down to visit, hoping maybe a little R&R would help.
Yeah, because you've been working so hard.
Brad had a habit of turning to his more successful, smarter brother every time things got bad. He would go running to his brother for help. So this is like a pattern of Brad's life.
He's known as Bad Brad and the rest of the family.
Richard Davidson had shown up in Pinehurst trying to get some of the wealthy folks to put up money for some unspecified business deal at the time. It was his sister-in-law, Betty, so Richard's wife, Betty, who thought to play matchmaker and introduce Brad to an unattached young socialite from Buffalo, New York, who shared his enthusiasm for sports, and her name was Elva Statler. Elva and Brad were married in Pinehurst at the home of Mr. Richard Davidson at Knollwood, at this cottage he was renting. The newspaper reported on the couple's attire at the wedding, along with a week of activities leading up to the event, including a tea for the bride, a buffet supper, a special dinner for the couple, and a stag dinner.
Now, could you imagine?
A week of activities?
A full week of all these big activities before you even have the wedding?
I mean, people do that, I guess.
It seems like a lot. I'm telling you, if I'd have won that $1 billion lottery just the other night, I would not do these types of things.
No.
Because it doesn't interest me at all.
I would buy a hearse.
And I would still have sticker shock. I would still be like, there's no way I'm spending $100,000 on a week of activities before the wedding even happens.
I don't even like enough people to invite them to the week of activity. Who's going to show up?
Now, me and Heather have thought to ourselves, we should throw a big event, but it's just me, her, and Rufus. And people are like waiting for like.
You were like, we should rent a space and have like this big catered event, a DJ and like photographer, like a big, to do gala event, but it's just the three of us.
And have like a crew out there parking cars, receiving people, have a full on crew for everything.
But they would just receive us.
But it's just us.
And Rufus.
People keep waiting for the other people to show up.
But I want Rufus to wear a top hat.
He would.
And a little tuxedo.
We discussed it.
He would be so cute.
He would be so cute.
Mary Evelyn de Niesoff shared her opinion of what life was really like in Pinehurst by saying, quote, "The fact is that this gang put Elva together with Brad because he needed a rich woman and they wanted to get her married off. There used to be men like that who came from good families that had lost their money, and they used to do the resort here and in Europe because this is where rich women went, usually older women who were willing to support these gigolos."
Wow, so they're basically dirty, rotten scoundrels. They go to these places where affluent women are known to hang out or be, and basically try to hook up with them.
It reminds me of the Von Bülow case that we covered.
Yes.
And how Mr. Klaus von Bülow was kind of described as one of these gigolos who ran in these elite circles, but he didn't really have any money.
Yeah.
And just sort of made his way through dating the rich women and stuff.
Swooning them.
Yes.
Yeah. Basically conning them.
In 1935, with the unemployment rate at nearly 25%, Elva Statler went to New York City before the wedding to purchase lavish gifts. She bought Brad a pair of enamel and onyx cufflinks, which cost $75, and a gold and silver engraved cigarette case at $135, which is about $2,000 by today's money.
Damn.
She had expensive tastes. Among her stops to purchase bridal wear was at Cartier and Saks Fifth Avenue.
So that leads me to believe that her family has quite a big fortune, like if she has this type of taste.
After the wedding, Elva returned to New York City to charge more items like linens and kitchenware. At the Steuben Glass Store on Fifth Avenue, she picked out 12 crystal wine glasses and 2 crystal decanters, a black glass pan, and 18 crystal cordials.
What's it? Oh, I don't know what a cordial is.
Little cordial, like you're having a cordial, like a drink. They're
like
little
tiny glasses?
Yeah, that you'd have your cordials in.
Okay. So here she is.
Like a schnapps, maybe.
Oh gosh. Make my stomach hurt. I've only had poor people's schnapps, and it's not good.
Have a little peppermint schnapps going.
Oh God, stop! I'm gonna hurl on my microphone. So she's just dropping money left and right, and I bet this has got Brad's eyes wide open because he loves being around this type of money.
On Wednesday, February 27th, 1935, around 7:30 a.m., butler Manny Emanuel Birch started getting Edgewood Cottage ready for his employers, the Davidsons. By the way, they call this a cottage. It's actually like a 10-room mansion that they refer to as the cottage.
God.
Yes.
I want to fight these people.
I've actually posted a picture of the cottage on Instagram if you want to check it out.
Whenever I hear cottage, I think of a 4 to 6 room house and all the rooms are small and it's quaint and there's lots of wood paneling, but this is not this kind of cottage.
No.
Okay.
No. When he opened the window treatments, he noticed the 12-cylinder 1934 Packard convertible Roadster was missing from the driveway. Mr. and Mrs. Davidson had been out late the evening before partying. Normally, if they returned in the early morning hours, the car was left in the driveway for Birch to tend to in the morning. Birch assumed the car was in the neighbor's garage, where it was sometimes parked.
Had no idea they had 12 cylinders back there. I bet that damn car would fly.
Well, Well, haven't you seen The Great Gatsby? They're just like zipping around in those
They're all
janky old cars.
They're like little race cars, though.
Usually, after chores, Birch would go to the post office to check the box. At 8 a.m., he returned to the cottage, again, a 10-room mansion, where Pearl Watson, the cook/housekeeper, was now making coffee. She had shown up. She usually got there about 8 in the morning, started making coffee, breakfast. The master of the house and their racy, scandalous going-ons were more like the roaring 1920s than the Depression-era 1930s. These were people who partied hard, stayed out late, and did their fair share of drinking.
Amongst other things, I'm sure.
Drinking. Just before 9 a.m., Birch went to the neighbor's garage to check the Packard. He opened the door, and that is when exhaust fumes poured out from the garage.
Oh, wow. I bet he was like, what the hell's going on here?
He walked over to the car, and that's when he notices a woman's foot protruding out of the Packard's door, and it was wearing a house slipper. Birch would later say, quote, "I was scared, but I walked over and looked. It was Mrs. Davidson."
Well, I mean, this would be shocking. Anyone would be like scared. I mean, honestly, it's a natural reaction.
Wearing a light wool sweater and a skirt that was later considered not warm enough for cold weather, and also it was way too big on Elva.
The skirt?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And it's like a mismatched outfit.
So this doesn't sound like her clothes.
Well, later people would be like, this is not something she would ever put on.
Right.
Right. Elva Davidson was found in an odd, contorted position, sprawled halfway out of the car, with one knee on the running board. She was lying face down, arms extended across the floorboard of the vehicle. Birch tried to rouse Mrs. Davidson, but she would not wake up. So the couple had visiting friends, Mr. and Mrs. Curtis Campaign, and his wife. So they were visiting from New Jersey, and they were still in bed when Birch returns to the cottage. Birch immediately ran to Brad Davidson's door and began banging. Pearl, after hearing Birch's desperation, began knocking on the guests' doors to wake them. When Birch was able to awaken Brad, he explained that Mrs. Davidson was found in the garage under strange circumstances. Brad and Curtis Campaign followed Birch to the garage where they viewed Elva. Pinehurst had no ambulance service and no funeral homes at the time. So Brad asked that Dr. Marr be called. He was a physician at the Carolina Hotel, which was nearby. As Brad kneeled down by his wife, Curtis Campaign told him not to move the body. He had read somewhere that a body shouldn't be moved and mentioned, quote, in case it was a murder.
Wow.
Which people were like, well, who said anything about murder?
Yeah, but I like this guy. He's from our True Crime Hearts. He's
Yes.
like, hold on a second.
Don't touch it. Don't move it.
I read an article about this.
Yes. Brad cradled Elva's head in his hands. Brad told the group he had last seen Elva around 5 a.m. when she had said, "Good night, darling."
Oh.
Dr. Marr arrived with a black medical bag determined to care for Elva, but learned quickly she was deceased. Though she seemed to be warm, he noticed rigor mortis was setting in. He said, quote, "Let's get her to the hospital." Elva was loaded into a car taken to the new Moore County Hospital. The evening before, the couples had attended a charity ball for the hospital. Only 3 miles away, Dr. Marr continued trying to revive Elva for another 2 hours until he finally declared her dead at 11:20 a.m. Dr. Marr noted that Elva's body had some bruising along the hips and thighs, which appeared to be fresh. The clothes Elva was wearing were mismatched, ill-fitting, and he was surprised that she had on no undergarments. No bra, no undies, no stockings, and it's cold. And the outfit she's wearing is like not a winter outfit.
Right. And women typically back then, or men as well, didn't go around without undergarments. It was like a piece of it was an important piece of your outfit, because a lot of the material, the textiles the clothes were made out of were rough.
Well, let's be honest. Most people ain't going around today out in public without their drawers on.
Well, some people go commando, and they're happy to tell you about it.
Well, I ain't free balling.
I'm not free balling either. And I could, but here's the thing. A lot of these textiles and materials back then, I think we're kind of spoiled nowadays. Everything's soft and comfy and maybe almost too comfortable. People say we're going too far with the leisure wear in society. But a lot of these textiles and materials were rough and not comfortable.
Well, you had girdles.
So the wool and things like that.
Yeah.
So
Those pointy bullet bras.
Yeah. The undergarments were actually very important.
All the metal boning and corsets and shit. Yeah.
You needed that layer of undergarment against your skin to protect you from these things you were wearing as far as you rubbing and chafing. So this is very strange for her not to have any of that on.
News spread across Pinehurst, mostly gossip, saying it was suicide. However, others wanted answers. Why would Elva take her own life? She had everything to live for: beauty, youth, wealth, social position, and a new husband from a prominent Washington, D.C. family.
Yeah, her behaviors up to this point seemed like someone who was happy and looking forward to the future. Buying linens, buying, crystal, buying these things they want, maybe to put in a new home and things like that. So, yeah, it doesn't add up.
Dr. Marr had noted the position of the body, and he felt it was odd. If it was suicide, why wouldn't Elva be sitting upright behind the wheel? If she was murdered, why would someone place her body in such a strange position?
Well, bodies are hard to move. Even if she's setting up, when she gets in the car, she sets up this situation. She's going to kill herself with carbon monoxide poisoning. And so you would imagine she's either still in a sitting position or at the maybe she's slumped over, onto the passenger side of the seat. But when you describe that sprawled basically across the floorboard with a foot hanging out, that does not at all seem like a natural position to me.
It was hard to imagine this was accidental. The scene appeared that maybe Elva was stepping out of the car and had fainted. So I'm thinking maybe she had a change of heart. And she realizes she doesn't want to do this. She's starting to climb out of the car.
But she's already woozy from the
Perhaps.
gas.
I mean, to me, that's what makes sense here.
Oh, and then maybe she fell back across the floorboard.
Perhaps.
Okay, that's a great point.
That's the only thing I can think of. But let's get on with our story. Brad's theory was that Elva likely had trouble sleeping and was going for a drive. He said sometimes his wife would play golf early in the morning if she couldn't sleep. Yet everyone wondered, why was Elva wearing slippers, no girdle, no undergarments, or stockings, especially with the cold temperatures?
Or clothes that would be appropriate for golfing in the cold.
And these were not sporting clothes at all. One of the people harboring misgivings about the case was Moore County Sheriff Charles McDonald. He was considered a squared-away guy with 700 miles of county to look after. Due to the size of the county, Pinehurst had no police department to speak of. There was a constable, a man named Deese, who quickly bowed out of the investigation and handed it over to Sheriff McDonald.
That's a huge chunk of land.
It's a big county.
Yeah, I don't even know if there's counties that big nowadays.
At 1 p.m., Sheriff McDonald arrived at the hospital. The death didn't sit right with him. He questioned how this death could be accidental. Along with coroner Hugh Kelly, the pair ventured over to the cottage sometime between 3 to 4 p.m. Neither man had handled a case like this before, so they were improvising as they went. After scoping out the property, the men wanted to learn more about what transpired the evening before. They knew Davidson and friends had partied the evening away at the charity ball at Pinehurst Country Club. The Fred Keebler Casanova Orchestra had played.
I love them.
There was dancing, a take a chance booth, and a silent auction that fueled this formal event.
Take a chance booth.
Sounds like a riot.
What's going on there? I need to look into that.
I don't know. It sounds like maybe some kind of gambling
game
or take a chance. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe take a chance with me. Yeah. Hey, baby.
Yeah, I did. I don't know. Might have been a mistake.
Yeah, buyer's remorse.
Sometimes. Yet those who attended the event will tell the sheriff that Mrs. Davidson was noticeably not having fun. She was described as being a, quote, party pooper all night.
I can't believe this woman's bringing me down.
It was said that Elva excitedly had purchased some artwork at the event, like as part of the silent auction, and was talking about where she was going to put it in the house, and that Brad soured her mood when he disapproved of the purchase. Like, he started criticizing this art. Though others say, well, he was just joking about it. Like, he was just teasing her about this artwork.
Right.
But that it seemed to really piss her off when he did this.
Well, maybe mind your business, and it's not like you're buying it, right?
Yeah, so my money.
I mean, really, Brad, bad Brad.
Go get your own money, Brad.
Go get your own money.
Brad just wants to go buy some Hobby Lobby art.
But he just wants to go make another shitty real estate deal and jack all her money off.
Yeah, I know. So Montesanti's Spaghetti Camp was an Italian restaurant near Pinehurst in Southern Pines, where the Davidsons and 18 other guests dined in the wee hours of the morning before Elva's death.
Spaghetti Camp?
Around 2 a.m., the group, which is 18 people, gathered at Montesanti's door demanding service. The owner, Angelo, answered. Now, he's been in bed asleep, but he answers the door, and the group tells him they're starving. So he agrees to open the restaurant and feed this large group.
Okay.
Because they are some of his, best customers.
He thought, look, get the spaghetti out and let's eat.
Yeah.
Is it me, or was Italian food? I'm just speculating. I guess maybe Italian food seemed fancy or something to people.
I don't know.
But, I mean, I've just never heard of a place that's a spaghetti camp.
Well, I think it's called a spaghetti camp because it was a rustic,
okay,
kind of lodge style building.
Oh, so much like your fish camp. It's just a certain style restaurant.
I think that's the deal.
Okay. And we'll move on.
I don't think they're sleeping in
Well, I knew they weren't camping in the spaghetti.
A rotini-shaped tent or anything.
Now that you've said that, I won't be able to stop thinking about the fact, can you make a pasta tent?
Excuse me, I would like to rent the garlic bread room.
Yeah, I was staying over there in that ravioli you got over there by the trees, and I got to say, it's got fleas.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
That's not good. Now, a waiter named John Nostragiocomio, which is a great name.
I'm sure that's exactly right.
Well, it's phonetically, it is. Nostragiocomio.
Okay.
You can look right here. That's how it's spelled. Told the sheriff that Elva Davidson was the only one not having a good time while at the spaghetti camp. While others were laughing and jovial, Elva sat at the table crying.
So this group's been having fun all night, and I'm going to assume they've been enjoying some libations, some spirits. They're probably a bit rowdy and loud.
And now they're eating 2 a.m. spaghetti.
They're eating late night spaghetti, which, I mean,
slurping the noodles.
The guy opened the restaurant, so they're happy. They're feeling it. They're getting that late night eat after party.
The guy's like, order my spicy meatballs.
Oh my gosh, it's the Mario.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so she's just standing out like a sore thumb in this group of jovial, half lit friends having fun. She's obviously not having fun.
She's the friend in a low place.
Okay.
Mr. Davidson, according to the server, made no effort to comfort his wife. Instead, he was talking, laughing, and dancing with others.
Okay.
Okay, so we learned this information. Well, back at the hospital, an autopsy is ordered. Dr. Marr and a Dr. C.C. Carpenter at Wake Forest College conducted the procedure.
Wow.
All organs were removed for vital testing at Duke University. Now, at first, Brad Davidson was wholly against the autopsy.
Imagine that.
Did not want an autopsy at all, but eventually was swayed. Also, a closed-door inquest was organized, which immediately barred the press and everyone else unless they were a witness. The coroner's jury, now we've heard of these coroners, like the jury, the coroner's inquest, right? Yeah. It would include 6 members who were hardworking, no-nonsense types in Pinehurst. So they're not drawing this jury from the wealthy. These are just like regular working folk.
Regular, honest working folk.
Yep.
Who are not going to be swayed or pressured or influenced.
Yes.
Okay.
So a few days after autopsy, the cadaver was returned to Powell Funeral Home in Pinehurst, where it would be transported to New York State because the family wanted to hold a private burial service at a family plot in New York. It was noted that the half dozen bruises on Elva's hips and thighs were superficial and likely no more than 48 hours old. The autopsy revealed that Elva died of carbon monoxide poisoning, which was the only condition capable of producing this death, according to the autopsy. Now, Brad didn't tell Elva's stepmother that she had passed away. Alice Statler only learned that Elva had died after reading an Associated Press story in the New York Times.
Holy cow.
That's when Alice Statler sent some of the family's attorneys, along with a Raleigh attorney that she hired, to look after the family's interests and accompany the body back to New York.
Wow.
Brad Davidson hired his own attorney, who happened to be the prosecutor in Moore County. Alice Statler also called North Carolina Governor John Eringhouse, who agreed to put a solicitor named Roland S. Pruitt in charge of the investigation and the inquest. Pruitt suggested to Mrs. Statler that Elva's death might be a homicide. He also wanted to delay the coroner's jury until an official autopsy report came in. Pruitt subpoenaed Brad Davidson, the campaigns, and the servants, along with other witnesses who had seen Elva the night before she died. Pruitt theorized the death was either a murder or suicide, but not an accident. Pruitt's theory was that if Elva was murdered, she was drugged or poisoned, then carried to the garage where it was staged to look like a suicide or accident.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
22 mourners gathered for the private ceremony in New York, where Elva was laid to rest next to her father in the family plot. So after this funeral service, Brad spoke briefly to the press, and he said, quote, "My wife's unfortunate death was purely accidental," to journalists. After the funeral, Brad returned to Pinehurst by train, where he played a round of golf and invited friends over for cocktails.
And this is how grieving husbands usually act.
Pruitt wanted to know more about Davidson's activities the morning of death. He sent investigators to Annapolis, Maryland, and previous places where Brad Davidson had lived to find out more information about his life and his first marriage. Pruitt also noted that women of that time often dressed nicely to commit suicide.
Well, yeah, I mean, to this day, they say that women are concerned about how their body will be found, how it will be viewed, and what people will think, once they are discovered. So oftentimes you'll have a little bit less messy types of suicides.
I knew someone who made care to go outside.
I know who you're talking about.
So that she did not leave, she didn't want anyone to have to clean up after her.
Yeah. Yeah, and these are this is why oftentimes it'll be something, with men, unfortunately, is a thing like unaliving yourself with a gun. And then women, a lot of times it'll be, overdose of pills of some sort. And they are concerned about how
I don't want someone to have to clean. I don't want to do this to my family. I don't want them to have to come clean. Yeah.
So it does not surprise me in the least that women would be known during this time when people had a lot more class and clothes and everything like that mattered more. To do
their hair and makeup,
put their nice clothes on,
be found, looking a certain way.
Yeah, that would not surprise me a bit.
Also, Pruitt was interested in the fact that Elva had paid $35 the night before for that artwork that she purchased and had planned to put in the house. And he thought that didn't make sense. He said a suicidal person doesn't typically make future plans to decorate.
Yeah.
She's not going to buy this artwork.
She's not going to be excitedly talking about how she has the perfect room or the perfect wall for this art. I mean, that just seems very out of character.
The coroner's jury would put money, class, privilege, and peculiar customs of the rich basically on display. When Brad Davidson was called to testify at the inquest, when it was finally settled, They had all the arrangements. He would say that the last few hours before Elva's death ended in an argument. He said Elva insisted on pulling the car around to the garage, but he had asked her to wait. He said, quote, "Let's leave the car right here. You come along and go to bed." Brad said that he and Elva went to their separate rooms, but that they had argued about, he told her just to go to bed and she wanted to park the car.
Okay.
But they went to bed in their separate rooms. Pruitt asked if the newlyweds often slept in different rooms. Brad said it was about 50-50.
Do you think that's weird? I mean, I know some people sleep in different rooms for various reasons. I don't think it's always a sign of trouble in a relationship. Some people snore. Some people...
yeah, I know people who snore that they sleep in a separate room from their spouse.
Or their spouse tosses and turns, or they just have different night habits. And so that's not always...
Well, and he's claiming Elva had insomnia. She
Right.
had trouble sleeping.
But still being quote-unquote newlyweds, it seems a bit
They've only
odd.
been married 7 weeks at this point.
What? Come on, man. You've already... Yeah, okay, so 50% of the time in 7 weeks, you've slept in separate rooms.
Elva had
weird.
twin beds in her room, and Brad had a single in his bedroom. When Pruitt asked about Brad's finances, he said he'd earned a modest income to contribute to the support of the children, but gave up the job before moving to Pinehurst. Pruitt questioned Brad about his depleted finances. Brad said that wasn't true. He had a job at the Annapolis Roads Club. Yet he failed to mention that the struggling club was not paying him and that he'd actually the last few months had worked there without pay.
So we're to believe that Brad reluctantly gave up his 9 to 5 so he could, be present for his new wife and his family.
Well, Dylan, the timeline doesn't add up because if you recall, Brad had ended his employment in Maryland, hopped a train down to Pinehurst to lick his wounds at his brother's house.
And to figure out his next move.
So, Brad may not be the most forthcoming with facts.
That's a very, very judicious way of putting it.
Pruitt asked Davidson if he planned to live on Elva's income, which he denied. Quote, "I happened to be very much in love with her. I didn't pay attention to monetary matters."
Yeah, he did not notice the big purchases or the jewelry.
$2,000 in gifts that she had given him at the height of the Great Depression.
No, he didn't notice that at all.
Well, I mean, it must be nice. It must be nice to live in a world where you don't have to concern yourself with monetary matters.
He was blinded by love.
Maybe he was blind. Maybe he stared too hard at that eclipse. He was blinded.
Hey, don't look at that eclipse with your naked eyes.
Elva's $1 million inheritance would leave Brad with a $1,000 a month annuity and about $300,000 in cash or securities, which would come in at about $2,500 a month. So he's looking at $3,500 a month, basically, from Elva's inheritance.
Yes, and account for inflation. I'm going to a rough guess of $10,000 a month.
I mean, $3,500 a month free money coming in now would be nice.
Well, it's probably even
But
bigger
much
than
less
Yeah.
back then.
It may have been $15,000 a month in today's dollars.
Pruitt asked about whether they had fights or if the relationship was ever abusive, which Brad denied. He claimed the bruises on Elva's thighs and hips were from playing tennis.
Oh, I thought he was going to say something else,
Well, maybe.
like making whoopee.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Brad testified that Elva had a bicycle accident as a young girl, which left her with a small silver plate in her skull. When asked about his return to Pinehurst after the funeral, Brad admitted that he had played golf, but told Pruitt, quote, "I felt I had to have some recreation."
Yeah. Okay.
Dylan, if I reach some untimely demise, you bury me, are you immediately going to find yourself some recreation?
No, because I'm going to be devastated.
You're not going to attend a yoga class or take up like pole dancing or something?
No, I'm not going to become part of a pickup game at the basketball at the YMCA.
No pickleball.
No, I would be devastated because I lost the love of my life.
Elva, according to her husband, had insomnia. She used 2 sleeping potions, including aluminol and alanol. I looked these up. I don't think these are a thing anymore.
No.
When she couldn't sleep, Elva frequently went on long drives at night or early in the morning, he said. She usually wore sporting clothes, according to Brad. Brad denied that Elva was unhappy at the club during the charity ball or at the spaghetti camp. Yet others had described the inconsolable weeping, which left Pruitt to wonder if Brad was blind or simply lying. Pruitt suggested that Brad may have poisoned Elva before carrying her to the garage. It was mentioned that Brad's first wife listed desertion as the reason for divorce.
Oh my god.
So this guy's going all in. Pruitt was disappointed when the Duke University autopsy came up with nothing further other than she died from the carbon monoxide poisoning.
Right, which they can't rule out how she got there or who caused it, but
Right.
The fact is she died from inhaling carbon monoxide.
Yet Elva's housekeeper, Pearl Watson, testified she had never seen the 22-year-old go for a drive in the early morning hours. She said when she had entered Elva's bedroom, the bed did look crumpled as if it had been slept in. An evening gown was hanging inside out in the bathroom, and the underclothes were scattered all on the floor. Quote, she usually left her clothes all over the place, according to the housekeeper. Curtis and Edna Campaign, who were in their 40s, testified they met Elva at Pinehurst in 1934. On the day before her death, the four played bridge until 6 p.m. Then they had tea, drank highballs after dinner. They left for the charity ball around 11 p.m., and that Brad danced with Elva once at the ball.
It seemed like a full day.
Well, it's a lot of work to sit around drinking highballs.
Yeah, but this is interesting because given that they do have servants and people that attend to them on a daily basis, these are some very good witnesses as to the state of her room or her mood and things like that. These are people that check on them and do for them every day. So they're going to notice people's habits and they're going to notice something out of place.
A highball does not really interest me.
What's in it?
Well, they are usually made with a spirit like whiskey, gin, vodka, or liquor, and then topped with a carbonated beverage like a seltzer or ginger beer or soda.
Oh, okay.
When I think of a highball, my mind always goes to random things. I think of the movie Scrooged when the ghost of Christmas Past shows up and it's his boss.
Yeah.
Like wanting a highball.
Yeah.
And then as the ghost is showing up and Bill Murray's in the restaurant, the highball has an eyeball in it. And he keeps looking at the drink and looking at the guy is he going to drink it? And he's freaking out. Anywho.
That's not random at all.
Nope. Dr. Marr testified that in January, after the honeymoon, Elva came to see him with torn shoulder ligaments and some injuries she said were from a car accident. Apparently they'd had some sort of car wreck on their honeymoon. But she refused treatment.
Well, it seems like a rather severe injury from a car wreck. And of course, back then, cars were a lot less safe, airbags, seatbelts.
But it also makes me wonder if they had a car wreck on the honeymoon, if Brad wasn't trying to kill her then. I mean,
yeah, right.
It's a coincidence, I suppose.
Why would you go to the doctor to get his opinion and him say, hey, yeah, you're injured or, you got torn ligaments, but then refuse treatment? That's kind of weird.
While this inquest is happening, the Washington Post reported, quote, few persons here think that Mrs. Davidson was murdered, but at the same time, they find it difficult to believe that she would have committed suicide or that her death could have been an accident.
What else does that leave?
I don't know. Friends Minnie and Herbert Vail were also brought in to testify. Many described Elva as being temperamental, moody, and depressed for no reason. She was a woman who craved and demanded attention, but became moody when she didn't get it. Elva had discussed the metal plate in her head multiple times with Minnie, and how sometimes it made her feel as though she wasn't herself. Allie Tufts backed up this testimony by stating, quote, Elva had ups and downs. She was awfully happy one minute and then sad the next. Both women stated Brad's behavior toward his wife was courteous, attentive, and polite. Pruitt felt these women had been coached, though. And he suggested that Brad held a cocktail party after the funeral, because remember they played golf and then had cocktails. That Brad held a cocktail party after the funeral with these witness friends so they could choreograph testimony.
Ooh. Also, they're kind of describing manic behavior there on Elva's part. Ups and extreme highs and lows.
Moody,
mad or sad for no reason. This could actually support the suicide theory.
Mr. and Mrs. Vale told the jury that on February 6th, they had attended a dinner party with the Davidsons. During the dinner, Elva was lively, but then took a sudden turn, becoming so moody that she just abruptly left the table. After Minnie Vale had a private talk with Elva, she appeared to return to herself. Herbert Vale told the jury that during a crying spell, Elva confided, quote, "I think the best solution would be for me to go out in the garage and turn on the motor."
Oh, wow.
Now, when Herbert Vale makes a statement, there is an audible gasp, not only from the other witnesses, but the jurors.
So basically the entire courtroom.
Yes. He also added, quote, "I think she's been mentally unbalanced since I've known her." The 6 male jurors, who'd sat through 5 days of complicated testimony, took only 15 minutes to return a verdict that Elva had, quote, "come to her death by carbon monoxide poisoning under circumstances unknown to the jury." The one thing the jury agreed on was that they couldn't agree on what exactly had happened to Elva. Of great interest as circumstantial evidence in any investigation would be the existence, and especially in this investigation, Dylan, would be the existence of a large insurance policy Brad may have taken out on Elva shortly before death. But no such document ever surfaced, though there was a Globe indemnity policy from which her lawyer paid some of Elva's legal fees. Another damning piece of evidence might be a transcript from Brad's divorce from his first wife indicating a pattern of abuse. However, the actual paperwork wasn't very compelling and didn't contain any kind of smoking gun. So a grand jury was never reopened in the case. Like, it never went to grand jury. They never reopened the case. However, the fight for Elva's money was just beginning. 10 days before she passed away, Elva had torn up an old will in which her brother, niece, and best friend would inherit her fortune. Now, Brad Davidson was the sole beneficiary of Elva's money. High-powered, out-of-town attorneys representing the 3 original heirs, as well as the others who were looking after Brad's interests, swooped in. So you've got about 6-7 attorneys combing over this will.
I could never get this many attorneys.
Well, Brad's got a few. The 3 heirs had attorneys, and then the stepmother had an attorney. So you got like 7 attorneys or something.
I find funny about the stepmother is it's like, does she even really care what happened to her?
No, she just wants her part of Elva's money.
That's it. She
just doesn't want Brad to get the money.
Her interest is purely, about whatever's left behind after Elva's death.
10 days after the inquest, no sooner than Elva's will had been filed at the Moore County Courthouse, a Raleigh attorney entered a caveat. So it's, or maybe a caveat? I don't know.
Maybe it's caveat. Yeah, I was like, damn, that's how you say that word? I've been saying caveat all my life.
No, it's caveat. I just am stupid right now.
It's okay. She's drunk.
We took a break halfway through this show, and then I had a sandwich, so now I'm like in a lunch stupor.
Yeah.
So pardon me, it's a caveat.
That was a good sandwich.
A caveat. What is wrong with me? Okay. It's not a caveat. Well, if you're in the mountains, it could be a caveat.
That's a damn one of them
old
old caveats.
It's a caveat. So entered a caveat, which is a formal notice it's a formal notice that an interested party files with the court requesting postponement of a proceeding until the filer has had a chance to be heard.
Right, and that's what I thought it was. I'm just kidding.
The caveat?
That's what a caveat means.
Look, we're country here. The caveat would freeze proceedings under the will until the court could hear a challenge to its validity. Now, under North Carolina law at that time, objectors could attack the will on 3 grounds. 1, there was a defect in the instrument itself, meaning that like undue influence had been inserted. Or that maybe Elva was not of sound mind when she wrote the will. These attorneys would attempt to show that Brad and his lawyer had virtually driven a suggestible Elva into unwisely changing the will.
Well,
so that is the 3-part, like, this is what they're going with.
These are red flags, and even any modern day case. If you hear that the will's been changed mere days before the alleged accident or disappearance or anything like that, that's going to be a red flag for investigators. It's going to make them take a hard look. So, I mean, it just seems like there's no smoking gun, as you pointed out, in any of this. A lot of speculation and assumptions. But, I mean, what are the odds that she completely changed her will 10 days before she... I mean, I guess you could argue, devil's advocate, she did that because she wanted bad Brad to have everything, and she knew she was going to commit suicide. So, I mean, I guess you could argue it from that perspective. But it all seems very, very strange.
It's so mysterious.
Right.
11 months after the coroner's inquest ended, a judge would hear the caveat. Meanwhile, Brad had stayed on in Pinehurst to maintain his residency, enduring gossip whenever he appeared in public. A jury of 12 men was drawn to hear the caveat in Carthage, North Carolina, as lawyers for Elva's friends and family attempted to prevent Brad from inheriting her fortune. During the testimony, Brad's attorney, a man named Leach, admitted that in 1934, I know, appropriate for a lawyer, huh? Leach. He admitted in 1934 that he had helped Brad with some legal troubles and that Elva had paid the bill, which was $22,500.
That's a lot of legal troubles, bud.
Yeah. Leach also admitted that he had suggested Elva change the will after her marriage to Brad. So the family attorney set out to make Leach look like a creep who was defending another creep. They also painted him as a male chauvinist who manipulated things to Brad's advantage. Davidson's opponents would pull out all stops to portray him as an undeserving man who, should not inherit his wife's money. When Brad was called to the stand, he presented several love letters exchanged between himself and Elva. And when asked about statements he allegedly made that he could, quote, live on his wife's money, he denied having said this. A reporter named Pat Frank, who worked for the Washington Herald, was able to dig up some considerable information about Elva Statler Davidson, and some of this appeared at the testimony, at the trial. He was able to learn from the butler, Emmanuel Birch, that Elva had downed a significant amount of alcohol before leaving for the charity ball, and that she and Brad fought frequently. Like, they had a tumultuous relationship. So here's Brad saying they rarely argued, and this guy's like, they fought all the damn time.
Yeah, those are very different opinions.
He also uncovered that 12 days before Elva's death, when she was in Boston changing her will, Brad was spotted in Annapolis with, quote, a vivacious divorcee who had been his constant companion before the marriage.
Ooh.
He also managed to find information about Elva's former love life. She had been madly in love with a wealthy young Yale graduate. Friends were stunned to learn of her sudden marriage to the middle-aged Brad. She also had a love affair with a Boston musician who worked at her father's hotel. He also found documents where the Packard car was impounded due to Brad's non-payments.
So, friends and family are very, very surprised when she has all these other suitors, boyfriends, who are seem like they're more successful than Brad. Maybe, who knows, even more handsome or more all that, from good families, interesting lives. And she pulls back from all of them and marries bad Brad, the middle-aged doof.
Yes, and the musician, so this writer was able to track down the musician, or I guess who he believed the musician was, and it was a guy named Lou Conrad, and he was like a published, musician, and had, I guess, quite a bit of notoriety,
right?
Like in New England,
successful.
And friends said that Elva was crazy about him, and they had all these things in common because she was a musician and she was wanting to be a concert pianist,
right?
And then she marries Brad, and they don't seem to have anything in common other than they both like to play golf. You know,
I like the way horses smell too.
they like to play golf and spend her money.
Yeah, I was going to say, spending her money is one of Brad's passionate pastimes.
Well, and their car is impounded and repossessed because he's not paying the payments on it. So even after his wife has died, in the interim, waiting on this will to go through, he's still not working. He's still not paying bills. Like, what is he doing?
So he's not even keeping up the bills he had before she passed away.
No, he's just being a deadbeat. Elva was also under psychiatric care in Boston. Dr. Richard Stetson, the treating psychiatrist, painted a portrait of a very unstable woman. During her treatment, he said Elva had expressed suicidal ideations multiple times. So after several days of testimony from Elva's physician in Boston and, of course, other witnesses and the other heirs, the jury upheld Elva's will and the money went to Brad.
Well, there was no good evidence there. I don't blame the jury on this one because there's no solid evidence to the contrary.
The jury determined that Elva was not under undue influence when she created the will just before her death. Brad died at age 79 on August 8th of 1972 in Florida. He is buried in Ivy Hill Cemetery in Upperville, Virginia, very close to his first wife's sprawling estate.
And right on the edge of that sprawling estate.
Brad certainly had a motive, money, and the timing of Elva's death, just days after she had signed over her wealth to him, is hard to ignore. He had the opportunity, but what means? In the end, only two people will ever know for certain what happened to the heiress, whether it was mere tragedy or murder, and neither is in a position now to shed light on the subject. Did Brad take a dark, hideous secret to his grave? Or was he an innocent man swept up in a mysterious calamity? We will never know, Dylan.
Oh my God.
We can only speculate.
And we excel at speculating here in the Mountain Murder Studio.
Well, Dylan, if you made a list of like, she did it to herself versus he did it to her, there's kind of equal
there is
evidence on both sides. So it would be hard to know or determine.
So if you're a juror or you're on this panel or even present in the courtroom and you've already drawn some conclusions about Brad, because he seems like a goober, right? He seems just like an asshole at the very least. And you're thinking he did it, but then you hear her dog, he
ain't no account.
he ain't worth nothing.
He ain't no count.
Ain't no count, which means he is a person of poor character.
He ain't worth nothing.
But then you hear her doctor get up there from, back home testifying about her, her psychiatric problems and saying that she may self-harm and all these things, and other people talking about, very strong mood swings up and down, as in a manic energy, if you will. It's kind of, it would be hard to definitively and beyond a reasonable doubt blame Brad if this is the evidence you're being presented with.
Dylan, my main resource for today's episode is a book written by Steve Bowser called Death of a Pinehurst Princess. I also read many old newspaper articles from the time.
I bet they were
ranging from like the New York Times to, local papers in North Carolina.
I bet there was a lot of articles about. I bet this was a big deal.
Yes, and when I have posted the images on social media, I have some photos of Elva on Instagram, as well as that tiny cottage they lived in.
I want to look at that.
There's some photos of Elva with her horse, Elva and Brad together. I actually have a few clips of the newspaper headlines at the time, that are like, was the heiress murdered?
Is it murder or mayhem?
Yes.
So here at the very end of it, what's your true thought? Do you think Brad did it?
I think that Elva struggled with some personal demons.
Yeah, it seems obvious.
And that she was probably depressed. Maybe she suffered from some other, form of mental illness. You mentioned maybe bipolar,
right?
Or maybe she had like some kind of personality. I mean, we've heard time and time again when you have a head injury, how it can affect your personality.
Yes.
And she did have the head injury, had
She
the metal
did.
plate in her head.
Yeah.
She'd had, a diving accident. She'd been in car wrecks. So she'd had, it seems, multiple injuries that maybe could have affected her mental state.
I forgot about the metal plate in her head. Could very well.
So I think
Yeah.
she could have definitely, I'm going to say more likely than not, she did take her own life. But I think that Brad played his part in knowing possibly how his wife was feeling or these things she was battling. And he played his part to make sure she was unstable.
That's
Like
wow.
not like her crying and weeping. Right. I can't imagine being out somewhere with you and I'm in the corner at a restaurant crying. You're not going to let me sit. You're going to take me home if you care about me. You're not going to be up partying and dancing. I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that he did not marry her out of care or concern because he loved her. And here he's just caring about having a good time and he doesn't care that she's in the corner crying. Because any good husband or wife or spouse or partner is going to take you home and not have you out in public upset like this.
Well,
and not be treating you like shit while you're upset.
Ignoring you, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that's a wow.
So
That's a great
I think
wrap
that
up.
he played his part in whatever mental illness she had. He was not being supportive.
He was not being supportive. He didn't care about her well-being.
No.
And he married her for obvious. I think that's easy to see. That you wrapped it up in a nice bow, Heather. I like that. If she did indeed self-harm, he certainly didn't mind that she'd done that, and he was happy to receive her fortune after that. He was a shitty husband.
Yes.
At the very least.
He seems like a selfish piece of crap. That's why he abandoned his first family. That's why his lazy ass couldn't keep a job.
Yup. That's why I call him Bad Brad.
Yeah.
Yup. All right. Well, thank you for that. I'd never
You're
ever.
welcome.
But it truly is a mystery. I really am kind of in the middle on
I know. It'll be interesting to hear what our listeners have to say. If you have an opinion, you can comment maybe on the post on Instagram.
Yeah.
Or just let us know what you think happened to Elva.
Yeah. And if you're like me and you're the gram's almost foreign to you, I never go on there, you can hit us up at mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com.
There it is.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. You know, Heather, I had an idea the other day. I know we have been late and we want to really get back on track, and this is a good start. That was a great story. Thank you for that. I think I would love to have just a silly, loosey-goosey episode where we read 1-star reviews for Mountain Murders.
Oh, goodness.
And
I don't know about that. There's not that many. You're making it sound like we could make this. It'd only be like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
We just got a couple.
There is really way less bad ones than 5 stars, and we appreciate everybody on that. And but no, they're funny though. I read a few.
My
just
favorite
the other day.
is the 1-star recently that said we were backwoods, and I'm like, you're listening to an Appalachian true crime podcast.
Independent.
What the fuck do you think you're getting into when you are listening to Appalachian true crime? Do you think you're going to get some metropolitan couple that's all polished and doesn't have accents?
Right.
I mean, what the hell is wrong with you?
I went to broadcasting school, you son bitch.
I'll have you know I did, you son bitch.
I'm glad you said that because that's the one that caught my eye the other day.
Backwoods.
It says backwoods, lots of opinions.
It's a podcast. I mean, are you I wish I could reply and just be like, are you stupid?
I'm like, are you dumb or what?
Are you stupid?
Only in Appalachian talk. How would you talk to him? How would your mamaw talk to this person?
Are you dumber than a hoe handle?
You're dumber than you ain't got the sense God give offense post.
You're dumber than a cake of cornbread.
Damn.
Yeah, I've heard that one before.
Well, I think cakes of cornbread are pretty damn smart.
That reviewer ain't right. Or that little kid on TikTok that's like, I don't even think he went to school.
We'll just end it with bless them.
Bless their hearts.
All right. Until next time.
I am backwoods and I am opinionated. As a matter of fact, that's what my bio says. Backwoods and opinionated.
Just lots of opinions to describe any podcast. It's pretty funny because that's literally what the podcast is. That person's opinion on something.
Yeah.
It's called words, people.
Yeah.
Use them. All right. Until next time, I'm going to stay here.
I'm going to go to the front woods. I'm not going to be in the backwoods anymore. I'm going to the front woods.
I'll have you know when I get that deck out front built, I'm going to set up there.
In the front woods?
On the front woods.
I'm from the front woods. I know. My reply is just like, we live in town. We live a block from downtown. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's right. There ain't nothing but asphalt and concrete.
I live off of Main Street. I ain't in no backwoods.
Ain't no gravel on my boots, you son of a bitch.
I'll have you know I got trash pickup and everything.
Wow. Damn, that was like rich people living, let's be honest.
It's true. All right. Bye, Dylan.
Bye, Heather.